People just found this idea of zero cancellation, clean cars, polite driver partners, wearing a uniform, not driving rashly within a speed limit. They found this incredibly refreshing, while we thought that this was table stakes.
BluSmart got smarter and smarter.
All of Airtel Business engagements now are direct to customers. We don't have any partnerships in between to kind of talk to customers. So everything that we get, all the actions we take are all driven by customer insights, customer feedback, and customer inputs.
You'll have 22 years of insight on customers. They would have grown from college to old with you.
There's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears which kind of go into building this, right? What you see is an outcome.
From a consumer side, we didn't know whether people would feel very anxious, sitting in the back of an EV thinking, is this car going to go up in flames? Is it going to run out of, battery and, will I be stranded on the middle of the highway?
Both of you, living in an India of today, this new India, this aspirational, driven India, how do you put, customer at the center of everything that you do? Tell us, how do you put the customer first?
The India of today is very different from the India of 10 years back. And the consumer is becoming more discretionary in the way they spend. The consumer is much more aware than what they were 10 years back, thanks to the proliferation of apps and the internet. And the level of income that, you see in urban areas, that people have, a disposable income has gone up significantly. All these put together, it's extremely important right now for businesses to very closely understand their consumers, which means having those dialogues with consumers, listening with empathy without trying to hard sell a product which you do not know will work or not. Be more humble and try to take feedback, and then try to build that back into your product and go back to them with a better, product offering. I think all this is extremely key. And I think businesses that do that well are the people who are really tapping into the current Indian consumer.
Big fan of Airtel, and I was telling you that I've been a customer since Airtel. I'm not talking on the enterprise side, but as a consumer, I've been an Airtel customer when the pricing was, 16, 24 rupees, to a strong loyalty, a fantastic brand. And in the enterprise business today, you're working with so many enterprises in India. Tell me, how have you managed to put the customer at the center?
Look, I think Anirudh spoke about it a lot from a consumer perspective, right? And I think a lot of that also reflects in the behavior in the B2B space, right? When you speak about empathy, when you speak about really understanding the customer challenges and solving for them, and in a broad sense, giving back time to the customer to really focus on their business is super critical now in the way a B2B business looks at a partner, right? And I think we've been privileged to be part of Airtel as a brand, which is kind of over so many years really built out, and the whole brand is built out on trust, value, on ensuring that we maintain privacy of your data. Correct? And if you look at all the products that Airtel or solutions Airtel has launched, even on the B2B side, right, it's always a customer-first approach. We might not be as dramatic as keeping a chair in the room saying this is the customer, right, imagining a customer. But I think it is we don't need a physical chair. It's just ingrained in our heart and soul that this is the customer. And everything that you do revolves around saying, how can I ensure that operationally I make the customer more efficient? And what can I do to ensure that their business accelerates? And I think as long as any new product or solution answers these questions well, is what we only then get back and launch it in the market.
Anirudh, to you, and then we're going to talk about the differentiated offerings, because you came to the market in 2019, and then of course we've heard of BluSmart. I can say so many people, men, women, and especially I would talk about women who talk here in Delhi NCR region, that they just love BluSmart. There is something different that you are giving, and there is a differentiated offering. There is a thinking, because you're not the first player, but you've managed to capture that mind share and hopefully the wallet share. Tell me, how are you doing things differently, and what is your offering?
The differentiated offering that BluSmart has did not always exist. It had to come into being because of certain unique insights that we were able to get from our consumers. And that's very important to remember, because BluSmart wasn't born the BluSmart way. We had to become BluSmart from we did not have any cars up front, right? And I think we did a lot of experimentation in the early days. When we had 20 cars, 50 cars, we tried pretty much everything, and everything was up for question at that time. We didn't know if these electric cars would run for 100 kilometers. We didn't know whether these cars would run out of charge. We didn't know whether the after sale service would be good enough, and whether the downtimes on these cars would be extremely high. All these from an operational standpoint. We also did not understand if driver partners would be able to understand how to drive these cars, and would they be able to troubleshoot any of the issues they face. And then from a consumer side, we didn't know whether people would feel very anxious, sitting in the back of an EV thinking, is this car going to go up in flames? Is it going to run out of, battery and, will I be stranded on the middle of the highway? So all of these things had to be tested over time, and we had to do a lot of proactive communication. We had to, train drivers and tell them that this is how EVs work. Automatic cars, people knew how to change gears and drive cars. They didn't know how to drive cars without gears, right? I mean, it's the reverse problem. It's easier to do, but it's more difficult in a way, right? And so all of these things actually came from talking to people. So it's about having those conversations, whether with businesses. In fact, not a lot of people know this, but BluSmart actually had we started doing, logistics businesses for other, corporates. I mean, we used to do employee transportation in the early days. We used to partner with other ride-hailing companies. We used to actually had put a large portion of our fleet on other ride-hailing companies, because we were experimenting, every single way, right? And then what we realized is that there is something that is working for these set of consumers. I'll tell you a very interesting story. I was talking to this driver partner in Gurgaon, and in those days, I mean, when we were working on another ride-hailing service, we obviously did not have access to a lot of, consumer data of, they would not tell us who's the consumer sitting in the car. But then one of the drivers, came up to me and they said that, I go to this building every day and this madam always takes my ride. And I asked them, and he said, I have this madam's phone number. She told me that, I will call you directly. Can you come and pick me up? And all this seemed very interesting, right? I mean, here is, we are trying to build a standardized service, and somebody really liked it. Yeah. So we decided that, we want to go deeper into this. We want to understand why this is happening. And then we realized that, again, I said madam, without knowing it, but it was a female customer who told us this, right? And this is the unique insight that we got, that people just found this idea of zero cancellation, clean cars, polite driver partners, wearing a uniform, not driving rashly within a speed limit. They found this incredibly refreshing, while we thought that this was table stakes. And then we realized that what we have started out as table stakes is actually a unique product offering that will actually sell in the market. And I think that's when we realized that let's double down on this. If we're going to build our own product on our own app, this is our USP.
For all the entrepreneurs and everyone who will be listening to us right now, is that you don't have a solution from day one. But if you're like listening to your customers and you're changing, constantly open to iterating, then you have a very BluSmart got smarter and smarter along the way. And I am saying as a female customer again that it matters so much. Like this is like what you said is like a basic, is the thing that everyone talks about BluSmart. So yeah, this is definitely a differentiated offering. What would you call out your differentiated offering? And again, for a company as large as you, how does that happen?
There's a lot of blood, sweat, and tears which kind of go into building this, right? What you see is an outcome. But I think if you look at from an organization perspective, we think of 3 key pillars on which everything gets built, right? One is just building out our digital infrastructure, which is all the fiber, all the data centers, all the MSCs, all the power, so that everything runs. Correct? And we are able to handle it. We know on a digital basis, we are able to monitor it, right? The second thing on top of it is all the digital experiences. How do you buy? How do you pay? How do you solution? How do we serve you, right? How do you raise tickets if there's an issue, right? That's the whole application layer, and ensuring that all of that is absolutely secure, because you need to manage 350, 400 million consumers' data at any point in time, right? And then top of that is all the digital solutions. right? What we end up seeing is the digital solution part of it, saying, this is the broadband, this is the IoT connections, etc., right? But typically works bottoms up. You spoke about the cars and driving ranges and the drivers and how you kind of train them. I think from us, it's a lot more physical infrastructure run across the length and breadth and the depth of the country than the whole application piece and then the whole solutions on top of it, right? Again, you go back to, I think, whether it's a consumer business or an enterprise or mid-market business, you go back to a conversation saying, what can you solve for the customer? And a lot of times, a customer may not necessarily know what is the problem to solve and whether that can be solved with technology.
Yeah.
Right? So for example, we'll talk about a couple of things that Airtel has launched, right? We launched, a lot of customers use broadband today. We said, but what is a consumer broadband may not necessarily be the right solution for a SMB. Because they need to manage security on their own, they need to manage their Wi-Fi on their own, they need to potentially also need some kind of productivity licenses, etc. Can we bundle all of this so that when we give them the pipe, it is a secured pipe? So whether we deploy something at the back end to ensure the pipe is clean, and we also give them some licenses to deploy on their endpoints, so that what they get is, they can stop the spamming and phishing attacks as much as they can, right? So it takes a load off the entrepreneur to really decide that, and invest and manage. And all of this in one bill, one simple solution to run that, right? The second part of the story, which is also very critical, is that how do you manage the customer engagement, right? One way is to say that, look, how do I do my go-to-market? One way is to do that, you go through different layers. And when you go through multiple layers, you end up having a challenge wherein the customer voice takes too long a time for the customer voice to reach you, right? Now at Airtel Business, from my level to the account manager, there are 4 levels, including mine and the account managers, right? So for all of us to understand what the customer is saying, it's a question of people picking up the phone and talking to 2 people in the organization, and all of us know what's the problem to solve, what's the key areas for us to work upon, and how to solve that, right? So all of Airtel Business engagements now are direct to customers. We don't have any partnerships in between to kind of talk to customers. So everything that we get, all the actions we take, are all driven by customer insights, customer feedback, and customer inputs, right? So I think that's how the business operates, whether it's, I think, on the consumer side of it or on the B2B side of it, right? Finally, we keep on saying, customer ke jitna paas ho, utna you are able to get the right things.
है एंड थैंक यू हरीश फॉर कॉलिंग दिस आउट, क्योंकि लगता है जब एयरटेल जैसा इतना बड़ा बिजनेस है, इतना बड़ा ब्रांड है, सो देन देयर बी सो मेनी हायरार्कीज एंड लेवल्स, बट यू आर सेइंग दैट इट्स नॉट देयर एट ऑल. यू आर गोइंग ऑन रिकॉर्ड टू से दैट. And that's why you stay relevant, you stay on top, and that's why so meaningful to all your customers.
And I think what happens, Shradha, is that it helps us launch newer solutions faster than anybody else, right? Yeah. Because we're actually solving a customer problem, right? So just for example is that banks sending SMSs to you, transactional, promotional, has been going on for many years, right? But what we realize is that with all the spam that's happening around, what we've been able to build with banks now is to say, they said, look, this is the problem we have, Harish, right? Then we said, okay, what can we do for you? So what we've done for banks is now around the SMS solution, we've built out something called a spam shield or a true delivery, right? Which means that when a customer receives the SMS, it is filtered through the Airtel system to know that it is not spam. It's actually coming from the bank, which is actually sending that message, right? So it helps you, limit or reduce the phishing attempts, etc. Now, these you will not hear unless you are close to your customer, right? And then it, of course, helps us build a larger, deeper, and a long-term relationship with some of these customers.
How you, as BluSmart, with your ambition, with your scale, how do you look at the ecosystem around you, and how are you leveraging technology to scale?
So BluSmart also has, probably not as big as Bharti Airtel or as deep as that, but we have a very strong infrastructure play in the back end. And then there is a consumer-facing layer which people experience, which is cabs on road, and then the app where you book, your trips and so on and so forth. But without the assets, the hard assets, which are the cars, and then without the charging assets and the network topology that we're able to build on EV charging, none of this would actually be possible. Now, somebody can, you can ask me, why are you trying to build this charging infrastructure? There should be enough, there are enough petrol pumps. The ride-hailing apps didn't have to build their own petrol pumps. But when it comes to EVs and EV charging specifically, there are certain challenges. And as you rightly said, it's a sunrise sector. The sun is still rising. It's not up there in the noonday sky. And the reason that is happening is because, first of all, it's a very popular thing in EV circles where we talk about the chicken and egg problem. The chicken and egg problem of EV charging is that people are continuously guessing and sitting outside and guessing, will the EVs come first and then demand charging, or will the chargers come first and then get EVs to come to them, right? So which will come first? Will the EVs, the electric vehicles, will they penetrate first, or will the chargers be built? The answer to that is that neither the chicken nor the egg will come 100% first. There will have to be, things will have to be built out, just like a startup also builds an MVP and then you scale it up. Now, the second part to this is that once people say that I'm going to set up the infra also, the challenge is EV charging, normal consumers may not know unless you probably own an EV or you are an EV aficionado and you're really Googling about EVs a lot. But there are multiple standards of charging for an EV. Just like your iPhone, the older iPhone used to charge on a different standard and your Samsung would charge on a different standard. Similarly, all your EVs do not charge on the same standard. So there are multiple charging standards that have proliferated in different parts of the world. In fact, the earlier charging standard, which was dominant in four-wheeler EV for India, also was called the Bharat standard or the GBT standard. And the later standard, which has started coming in a lot of more future models, are the CCS2 standard, right? And there are other standards also like CHAdeMO and all that have, that were popularized by the Japanese. And those have also come in a lot of Japanese cars, but not in India so far. Now, of course, there is a consensus that is slowly moving probably towards the CCS2, but this all of this puts, people in anxiety. They are like, my infrastructure to khada kar dunga, to what happens if this becomes obsolete? Because I need to build this infra for 10 years. And what happens if all the cars start moving from, this standard to that standard and I'm stuck with age-old technology that nobody will use, right? So everybody is trying to be doubly cautious. And this is leading to a slightly slower proliferation of EVs on the ground. And the third aspect that I wanted to talk about was that even if you look at the chicken and egg problem getting solved and the charger standard getting solved, the third piece is that people are building still today, because it's not a scale business yet. People are building walled gardens, right? Everyone is trying to build their small unique play, and a lot of captive charging infrastructure is getting built, but not all of this is open towards the public. So there is not a lot of interoperability that is coming in, etc., etc. So there might technically be a lot more chargers available, but you cannot access them. And what we are trying to do at BluSmart is we're trying to solve this. So historically we have built for our cars, but now we are opening up the chargers and we are saying that we are now open to other fleets coming to our hubs and charging. We are open to retail customers coming to our hubs and charging. So that entire play, we are trying to open it up, and we are hoping that more people will also start opening it up. We are hoping people will start cross-listing their chargers. So I can list on another person's network, they can list on my network, and we figure out what are the ways to make margins of each transaction, so on and so forth. All of those are imminently doable, right? I mean, it's not rocket science, but the will needs to be there, that's the way to build it out. And I think that's slowly coming in. So I believe that 2024, 25, 26, the next 3 years are going to be massive. A lot of new OEMs are also entering, both from the car manufacturing side as well as from the EV charging side. And there is also a lot of mind share that has already been created in terms of, people being very aware of EVs, and their EVs are also very visible with their green number plates and very snazzy looks and, so on and so forth. So it's becoming an aspirational piece, and that's the way it's entering the market. So I think everybody is sort of getting their go-to-market strategy, sort of getting their thoughts around that, right? I think now it's all about execution, and I think the next 3 years are going to see a massive proliferation of four-wheeler EVs. There is already a massive proliferation that's already happening on the two-wheelers and three-wheeler side, so I don't need to talk about that. Four-wheelers are also going to, we're going to electrify our four-wheelers over the next 3 to 5 years.
Tell us, what are some of the challenges that you see the companies face when they are growing and when they are scaling? One, we'd love to hear from you. And again, I'm going to plug that how does Airtel Business solve for that?
If you look at what Airtel Business does, right, we serve more than 1 million customers, B2B customers today, right? So it's like a really, it's like a really, really large number, right? And most of them, if not all, are I mean, 95% of them are actually in this what we call the SMB space, right? I think one of the fatal errors that organizations make is to look at SMB as one homogeneous bucket, right? That you build a solution and it works for everyone, right? I think what we realized over a period of time, and maybe we started with that thought as well. Sometimes it's easier to begin with something and then learn along the way, right? So we started with that thought. But what we realized very quickly that every customer has a very, very different problem to solve, right? I'll pick up in continuity from what Anirudh said, right? He said that if I have to do a response in a millisecond of saying whether the how much charge is on the car and which driver is available, irrespective of the telematics that he builds, irrespective of the fantastic analytics he has or the beautiful car he has, it doesn't work unless the mobility connection is strong enough for him to transmit that data in milliseconds, right? Correct? So the problem to solve for Anirudh is very different from a problem to solve for someone who's going to have an internet connection at his home, at his or her home, and run a Netflix video on top of it, correct? Or do a Zoom call on top of it, right? I can potentially afford a couple of seconds there. I can't afford a delay on this part of the story, right? So as you get into that customer space, you realize that there is a lot of difference in the way each customer wants their problem to be solved, right? And I think what works for us now is because we work with so many customers, we are able to actually take the best practices, the IT roadmaps, the app development roadmaps of one set of successful customers in the industry and go and talk to others saying, why don't you consider doing this, right? Because our GTM teams have matured over a period of time. They have worked with customers, just for example, let's just say a well-established bank, right? How does a well-established private bank run their core connectivity network? How do they run their data centers? How do they run their call centers? How do they run their customer engagement, communication, everything else, right? Can we take some of those best practices to other smaller banks who may not have the kind of exposure, people, and they're still in the scale-up phase saying, look, this is how you build out the roadmap. I know there are 10 things to solve for. Solve these first 3. Let's move to the next 3. Yes, it's a 2-year roadmap for you to kind of get to where you want to. You can't do it. Let's not prioritize 7 over 1. Correct? I think sometimes they like to get an external perspective of people who have engaged with customers, of their profile, right? So for example, we'll go back and talk about saying, what we realize we sell a lot of what we call naked internet or bare internet, which is just a lease line connection, correct? Now when we engage with a lot of M&T customers, they came back and said, look, we have factories in remote locations. We don't necessarily have the best IT people sitting out of our factories and remote locations, right? So when we buy a secured UTM box, we don't have anyone to put the policies on top of it to, kind of really look at it, right? Why don't you give us connectivity which is secured? So that you put the box, you manage it, you raise the incidence tickets, you solve for it. I should be able to see it all through a simple dashboard, knowing that, look, I know Airtel is going to take care of it, correct? But that may or may not work for ITS company, right? Because their offices are in the right places, they have the right set of IT people to kind of run those kind of stuff, right? So that is the reason we launched something called a secured internet, which takes care and which works beautifully well with M&D customers. But it may not have that kind of a play with the ITS customers, correct? So I think for Airtel Business, the success mantra has really been going after looking at the different verticals in the SMB space and in the enterprise space, trying to look at the best practices from each of these customers, give it to the customers who are really going from 0 to 1, 1 to 10, 10 to 100, and then ensure that they are able to execute it seamlessly.
You have all the insights on all of us. And you'll have 22 years of insight on customers. They would have grown from college to old with you.
But there are very strict data privacy laws, right? Yeah. So we are very, very aware about.
But a cluster of data inside.
Yes. So look, we are very, very aware of how to use that data and where not to use that data, right? So I think that's the data privacy and ensuring that every customer's data is kind of secure. And only used in, like you rightly said, in larger group settings versus individualistic is very, very critical. And I think that's the core reason for the trust that the Airtel brand today kind of enjoys in the end, whether in the consumer space or even in the B2B space, right? But yes, we do that. We do it at a group level to really understand, what are the customer issues that happen and how can we help fix them. And then you go to your entire customer lifecycle value. How do you ensure that you are able to optimize that? How do you ensure that you proactively solve the issues, right, before they actually happen?
I'm just reading this, that you've said in the past that the first step to building customer love is to understand the customer's needs. How have you done that?
In the time when we started it, so back in 2019, so if we go back to 2019, all of us, and in fact even today, I would have maybe around 100 to 200 phone numbers saved with the customers' names on my phone. And there was a direct hotline between customers and all the co-founders, and people actually we used to have a WhatsApp chat with people whenever they used to have issues. And to be honest, I mean, before the BluSmart app existed, people would be able to call us at a particular number, and we used to send them, we used to be able to send them a cab and so on and so forth. And after that, we got a very basic MVP kind of an app where people were able to select a time slot. And so in fact, probably need to cut to a slightly reasoning behind this story, that why does BluSmart have scheduling, right? Why does BluSmart allow for ride scheduling? And how did it come about in 2019 when nobody ever did scheduling, right? That's because I think we had a very contrarian take on, ride scheduling. And I think economic value is unlocked for a business when, your unique ability to sell something matches a buyer's latent need, right? And so the buyer may or may not know about that need. It's about the business trying to, even make the customer aware of that, latent need. People have famously said that customers don't know what they want. So I think that's true in a certain way, right? And at that time, people actually used to, ask us, who's going to take a scheduled ride? I mean, the idea at that point was, you book a cab, it'll come in 2 minutes. Why do you need to schedule a cab? Why do you need to book it for the next day? So on and so forth. What we realized is that there is a massive trust issue that was coming up in terms of whether the cab will come on time, whether the driver partner will cancel, cause a last minute problem for customers, so on and so forth. The second thing is that, every day morning, I used to take a lot of cabs as well. And every day morning, when you're having breakfast, you're booking a cab with your left hand, and then you're eating your poha with your right hand, and then the driver bhaiya is then cancelling.
अरे ये सब समझेंगे, ये visual सब समझेंगे.
So that sort of thing used to happen every day, right?
Yes.
And
when you get cancelled to airport also. Yes.
So then we realized that nahi, what we want is peace of mind. What we want is have a responsible, safe, reliable service where there's peace of mind. एक बार book कर लिया, cab will come at that time. You don't need to bother about it. If it's 2 a.m., the cab will be there at 2 a.m. If it is 10 p.m., it will be there at 10 p.m. But you don't need to bother about it. Now, of course, at that point, it took a little bit of time, and it's about those early adopters who could immediately find value in that, in that service. And what you rightly said, right? And you would have been one of potentially, I mean, by what you said, you could have potentially been one of those early adopters, because airports as a service, right? This kind of a service matches the airport need a lot, because it's a fixed time that you need to reach the airport at, and it's a planned trip. It's not a last minute trip. Your flight leaves at 7 a.m. You need to be at the airport by say 6 or 5:30. So you would need to leave by 4:30, from home. So why can't you, one day before you can plan your, trip at 4:30, you would anyway want to do that, right? That's how you have planned your whole day. Similarly, maybe going for a movie would also match that. Going to office would match that a lot. Maybe coming back from office would be more of a problem, but going to office every day, people would want to go at a particular time, right? So there are certain use cases where this clicked a lot. And the other place where this clicked a lot, where our service started clicking a lot, is the entire idea of when you talk about comfort, reliability, peace of mind, then you're talking about, people enjoying the cab over a longer period of time. So earlier, the cab used to be viewed as the, lowest possible way in which you can go from point A to point B. can I make that a comfortable experience where the cab ride itself is not something that you are absolutely, you have to tolerate, but it's something that you look forward to. That, हाँ यार ये cab में बैठेंगे, it'll be very relaxed. I'll sit down, listen to my music, or I'll send out a couple of emails, and it'll be like absolutely peaceful, and I'll get down at, at this location at this time, right? And I think that's why our rental service really picked up. Because people then started blocking these cabs for 8 hours, 10 hours, 6 hours. And they used to spend the whole day, going from point A to point B. During Diwali, our service really picks up because people use BluSmart to go to all their relatives' place. They go with like massive boxes of sweets to, and go around, right? And the best part is, they leave their sweets in the car and then they go and they give it to their, relatives, and they'll come back because they know that it's safe, right? In India, we also have those kinds of...
These are so important.
Yeah, absolutely, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I still have a little bit of issues, and it's better now than before. When baggage comes out of the aeroplane, I'm always afraid that somebody will pick up my baggage and go, right? I mean, I'm still...
Sometimes our baggage will not come only.
So when it's a trust deficit nation, and we need to make people aware that it's a safe thing. This actually backfired thoda bahut. I'll tell you why. Because people started becoming so comfortable, sometimes they would leave their phones in the car and they would go. And the drivers would call back and they'll say that, sir, to phone chhod ke chale gaye. How can we return it to them, right?
It's commendable what BluSmart has done. Sometimes I think as an ecosystem, as us, we don't celebrate and we don't recognize, because you are not today a very large business. You are a new business, and you've been in a very short amount of time being able to create that credibility, वो trust. वो आसान नहीं होता है. वो हर एक ride से होता है, हर एक चीज पे consistency और effort होता है, and you've done that.
Right.
Yeah.
And we need to keep doing that. The cliche says it's always day 0 or day 1, but I mean, that's truly what it is, right? And the moment you set a benchmark, and to be honest, I mean, how it works in the industry is that earlier the bar was set very low and it was very easy to get across. And now when you start becoming a more relevant player in the market, then the bar actually starts rising. And then you need to meet that, and you need to raise the bar further, right? And of course, it becomes more difficult for competition to, they also need to raise their bar. And therefore, I believe the entire category, it's great for the category.
Yes.
The category will improve. It's not just BluSmart that will improve. The whole category will improve, because that's the way to survive. Customers no longer want the cheapest mode of transit from point A to point B. That's our thesis. We believe that people are discerning enough to understand that this is the type of cab, this is the kind of experience that I want, this is the kind of driver partner I want to interact with, this is the kind of safety that I want to experience. So these are all factors that are coming into the Indian consumer, and this raising of the bar will continue. It will not stop here in 2024 January, right? 2026 January, we'll be talking about better services. We're going to talk about probably more premiumization of certain segments of the service.
Tell me, how do you measure the satisfaction, and how do you maintain loyalty with your partners, cab drivers and all?
So BluSmart is a 4.8 to 4.9 star, depending on which day you see it, rated mobility service, which is the highest in the world, right? But that being said, app rating is a slightly lagging indicator to what actually happens. It doesn't change every day. What you get to see on a much more real-time basis is the rating after every trip. You get to understand what went wrong. You actually have to double click into the subjective elements of rating, where the people who actually write in that text box saying that this is what happened, they are the people who are actually, either something went really good for them or really bad for them, right? They are the only people who will take the pain to write. So somebody who takes the pain to write, you should take the pain to read and understand. So that is there. But apart from that, I think we look at metrics like trips per rider. So we ensure that that's a proxy for wallet share. So we believe that as a sticky app service, a sticky mobility service, we need to service as many use cases as possible for the consumer, and we need to be a dominant player in terms of wallet share. We don't want to signal to customers that we are there for you only for your early morning trip, but in the evenings you use some other service. So that's not the point, right? So the trips per rider element becomes a very important thing. Customer NPS is something that we regularly track. We figure out how do we, and we believe that we have some of the best industry NPS in terms of mobility, which also reflects in the app rating. But very importantly, and you mentioned that also, and thank you for that, you mentioned on the driver partner side what happens, right? Because what we realize is that when there are sticky driver partners, then you have sticky consumers, because service delivery becomes better when there are people who understand your service, who have tenure with you, who understand the way your application works, the customer expectations better, right? Driver partners will get out of the car, open the door for you, help you with your luggage, right? That's that level of institutionalized service that comes in, and they start, they are the brand ambassadors on the ground. I mean, all of us are sitting in a room and, maybe writing code or, devising marketing campaigns, but ultimately proof is on the ground. First of all, we are a reliable partner for them, right? So first of all, they need to understand that the brand is there for them. They need to understand what the brand expects of them. We need to help them with some level of upskilling, because many times you need to understand that BluSmart has differentiated from the category by doing XYZ things, but it's ultimately the driver partners who are helping us do that. And the driver partners come from the category. So the driver partners did not know this beforehand. It's about us institutionalizing that, bringing that, ethos into their thinking to change the way, that they should not chew pan while driving a car. I mean, this might be someone who might have been chewing pan maybe, 3 months back. And that's not something that, you would not want the smell of a cigarette inside the car when you're sitting, right? And this might, in fact, a lot of times what driver partners have told us is that the consumer wants to smoke and they would be forceful sometimes, and we need to even tell driver partners, how do you, without getting aggressive, advise the consumer not to smoke in the car, right? I mean, all of these are very difficult tasks, and I think this comes with repeated training. It comes with, bringing back the point of what the brand is again and again and again, and telling and explaining to the driver partners that they are actually the brand. I mean, the cars are the brand, the driver partners are the brand. So the people who are cleaning the car, the hub staff who are fueling the car to ensure. So that is what the brand ultimately is. And it's the marketing and what you see above is only the promise. But it's about delivery against the promise that actually, makes people believe in the promise. Otherwise, it's just empty words.
Drivers, do they cancel? Do you measure that?
Absolutely. So driver partners do not have a cancellation button on the BluSmart app.
Very nice.
But that being said, there are always workarounds, because, for example, they may call the customer and they may ask the customer to cancel and so on and so forth, right? So that also we track, right? So, for example, first of all, the entire idea is that first of all, if we identify that there are, first of all, removing the cancellation button from the driver partner app was the first step. But the second thing is we started understanding that there are certain issues that driver partners face, which makes it difficult for them to take a trip. For example, something goes wrong. For example, he was talking about internet connectivity, right? Suppose the internet connectivity is not there in the area where the car is, and we have, our system says that the car has 40% charge, but it actually has only 30% charge. And the driver partner understands by their knowledge that they will not be able to complete that trip. So they will want to proactively cancel it, which means we will have to give them a helpline for them to cancel it. And if those kinds of calls start increasing, then we realize that there's something wrong with our systems. We try to improve our connectivity. We try to improve the way the algorithm works, so on and so forth. So you always, building a process is okay, but then you need to also then figure out all the root causes of all the failure modes, and then what are the each potential failure mode we then try to deep dive and then solve for those, right? So that's kind of like how we're looking at it.
How do you derive insights, pick up on trends, and how do you then help businesses to leverage it?
Look, I think there are a few things here, right? I think there are two parts of the business. One part, of course, is the consumer part of the business, where I think there is something akin to what BluSmart is heading towards, right? Where you look at usage, network, call drops, call engagements, how long are you using the network, how long, what is the age on network of a customer. Like you said, you've been using Airtel forever, right? So you are clearly a privileged customer for us as well, in that sense, right? So I think there are a lot of metrics on the consumer side of the business that we look at, right? On the B2B side of the business, I think what we try and understand is really, it's more industry specific, like I kind of alluded earlier, correct? So we go back and look at saying, from our perspective, if it's a M&D customer, right? Typically, what are the digitization solutions that the customer actually invests in at what point in time in their life cycle, right? And internally we look at it as a product penetration PPI index, as we call it, saying that, look, if this is an M&D customer, and do I have my mobility connections with that customer? Do I have my connectivity with that customer? By the way, do they also use some M2M or IoT in their factories? Do I have that with them? If they are using cloud solutions, do I have some kind of cloud solution engagement going on with them? If they're expanding factories, instead of a normal connectivity, are they going to go to a SD-WAN or a managed internet or something like that over a period of time, correct? So from our perspective, when we look at customers, we look at saying that, what are the different solutions this customer should ideally be using, right? And do we have a share of that business? And if we don't have a share, we go back and have that conversation of saying, look, are you expanding your IT infrastructure? Are you looking at these things? Customers in your space actually look at these as the next level of investments to make in the business, right? Look, a lot of it is, again, is the last man on the ground conversation. Correct? And when you have your own people on the ground, when you engage with them, they are typically the first set of people who pull the right context from the customer. They are the ones who will come back and tell you that, a customer is looking for ABC, a customer is facing a service issue, a customer is looking at this problem to solve. And as long as you're able to pick that up from the ground and then go back and solve for it, I think it kind of helps the business.
As an Airtel, you would have very high-paying customers in SMB, क्योंकि सब SMB एक होते नहीं है. एक बहुत पे करने वाला हीरो होगा और एक होगा बेचारा SMB जो कि ग्रो कर रहा होगा और उसके भी requirements होंगे. How do you ensure, again, putting customer first on a daily basis, that your team, when they are interacting with someone who would be giving you like millions of dollars of billing to someone who's small, the treatment, the service, the empathy is equal?
Look, I think there are, the first thing which you kind of, Shradha, always look at is customer segmentation, correct? And the way Airtel Business approaches is that there's a list of customers who are enterprise, government customers, and then there's a team which kind of looks after those customers. It's not necessarily about the amount of money they spend with us, but the sophistication and the level of that customer, right? So it's possible that there could be a large customer who spends a minimal amount of money with me. I may have a 10% share of their business, but they don't the kind of engagement they expect is still that same high quality engagement, right? So you build your team's basis the customer segmentation, not necessarily your business with the customer, right? Building segmentation basis your business with the customer is an inside-out approach, and which is prone to failure. Correct? So that's enterprise. What we do in SMB again is that we've kind of broadly looked at it from three buckets, right? One bucket is anybody who is less than 10 employees, right? We believe that the right way to serve that customer is through our retail stores, because they are in the vicinity, they are in the 3 to 5 kilometer radius. If they have an issue or if they want to buy something, it's just easier for them to walk over to the retail store or for the retail guy to kind of just reach them in 30 minutes or 15 minutes kind of a time frame, right? So anybody less to 10 to 15, 20 employees, we prefer that they get handled to the retail store because there's the right customer experience to kind of give them, right? Then the second part is at the higher end of the SMB, right? Which are like we call like evolved customers, right? Whether it is people like BluSmart or a lot of the startups in the space and a lot of reasonably large customers who may not have the enterprise wallet in terms of ability to spend, but they have an enterprise mindset. Saying that, look, I want the best solutions and I have a clear roadmap of where my organization is supposed to go. There as well, you need a very different kind of handling, which means that you would potentially put one sales guy to manage 30, 40 customers, not more than that. And it's not the important thing is it cannot be an inside-out view. Saying, mera dhanda kitna hai uske saath. It has to be an outside-in view to understand what is the customer business. And accordingly, you put people to support it. And this is not only the sales people. It is also the whole support engine, correct? Which means that if a customer has an issue, who solves it? What is the capability of those people to solve those issues, right? Yeah. Are they a call center? Are they trained? Are they certified? Are they able to understand the customer ecosystem and take them through the process to solve? And the third part, of course, is the whole delivery ecosystem, right? So if you need to, and that's why, for example, a simple, we say broadband is a broadband. But there's a very different delivery mechanism for a broadband in a home. Because वो घर पे चाहिए, कोई ना कोई potentially घर पे होता है to do it. So anytime you get possible. But if you're going to deliver it to a business, right? The guy will say, hold on, I'm in a meeting. You can't go after 7 p.m. You can't go before 9 a.m. in the morning. And you go at the time which the customer asks you to come in. And the guy will say, look, hold on, I'm in a meeting. You need to wait for 2 hours. Right? But my engineer cannot say, sorry, sir, I need to do 4 installations. I need to go to the next meeting. I still have to plan for that. and take the customer. So it's the same broadband in a sense, but your delivery depends on what is the type of customer, right? So I think it's about an outside-in view of knowing your customer and then ensuring that you provide the right service.
पूछना चाहेंगे, how are you looking at this year? What can we expect as you scale?
The 0 to 1 journey is about a lot about what we talked about, where we did a lot of insight mining, listening to consumers, and actually building a product that suited the market and the consumer, and so on and so forth. So that was what 0 to 1 was about. 1 to 10 was about figuring out if these small customer sets that we have identified, can these be expanded significantly? Can this be replicated in other geographies, or was it a one geography phenomena, and therefore we did Bangalore after launching in Gurgaon? That expansion and also keeping that service delivery intact largely was part of that problem. And I think the 10 to 100 kind of journey, and I think we're still somewhere, in between the 1 to 10, 10 to 100 kind of piece, is where you actually massify this, where you actually say that, okay, now I've figured out something, there is something working in these two markets. Can I profitably scale up in both these geographies, launch another 10 more geographies, maybe in India, maybe abroad, and, deep dive on multiple, cohorts of customers in each of them, and try to create the same brand promise, the same belief in simplicity and in reliability in terms of peace of mind that we wish to create, right? And become that, when people start thinking, when they start thinking about peace of mind related to mobility, for us to be the first top of mind to the consumer, right? I mean, right now we are probably still not head and shoulders above, probably people would still have a second mobility app for the cases where they're not able to get slots at BluSmart, or particular maybe very fast, a trip where they want to take a cab in 10 minutes. That's all something that probably they would still have to rely on someone else on. But what we are saying is, we've, for example, launched our Express Ride service right now, which is a 20-minute absolute guarantee service. We're saying that if we do not come in 20 minutes, we'll actually give you money back. But that's the kind of promise that we're coming up with. Can we shrink that 20 minutes to a 10 minutes to a 5 minutes? I think 10 minutes is like a very, very good window where we become, massively competitive. And can we scale this, across India, across the world? Maybe can it be powered by sustainable charging infrastructure? We're also doing a lot on green power, where we call ourselves a zero emission, tailpipe emission company. But can we go from zero tailpipe emission to zero emission, which basically says that the grid currently still has some power that is not clean, significant power that's not clean. But can we go renewable there, right? So can we get solar power? Can we get renewable power and then power these cars using that? So I think these are all the kind of projects that we wish to take as we move from the 10 to 100 phase, become a household brand name for consumers, become something that is no longer a niche, that people are no longer booking for their parents, but parents booking for their kids, right? I mean, older parents, when I'm talking about, currently, I mean, a lot of people probably in the 50s, 60s, 70s may not know BluSmart, right? Probably the people in their 20s, 30s, people who are tech aware are much more aware about BluSmart. But can we become more, holistic in terms of household coverage? Can we be a mobility brand that services multiple more needs than we can service today, and multiple more geographies, while retaining that brand promise of peace of mind, simplicity, and reliability?
What can we expect from you this year? What are some of the things that you are thinking about going deep in this segment, and especially with startups, if I may ask?
From servicing the SMB segment perspective, right? I think initially we said we have close to 1 million SMB customers. But if you actually look at it, India has about 62 million SMB customers today, right? People who are classified as SMB and government kind of registered with MSME, etc., right? And this number will 2x over the next 3 to 5 years time frame, right? So I think our job is to ensure that the kind of service, the kind of coverage, the kind of engagement that we have with 1 million SMEs, are our systems, processes, people ready when that explodes to 5 million, 10 million over the next 5 to 10 years kind of a time frame, right? So I think our whole thinking is about saying, whatever we have built so far, right? And we talk about saying, India was a 1 trillion economy, it took so many years, and going to 3 trillion took substantially lesser time. I think the same would be with BluSmart, right? I think for us, getting to the first 100,000 customers took a long time. The next 300, 400,000 was much faster. The next 500,000 happens in a blink of an eye, right? So for us, one is internal looking to ensure that our processes, systems, products, people are actually built to kind of manage scale over a period of time. And second is from an outside in, ensuring that we continue to be close to the customer to understand how their needs are changing. Yeah. Right, because it's not it's not a stable customer. It's not an environment where a business is just continuing to exist as it is for a long period of time. You speak to any SME customer today, and I meet like 40, 50 customers a minimum a month, right? You speak to any customer today, nobody talks about anything less than a 2x growth in 2 years time frame, 2x growth in a 3 years time frame. This was not the conversation 3 to 5 years earlier. They were happy to kind of run the business, have a, we call it a Hindu growth rate, 5%, 8% se ho raha hai. They're sab kuch khush hai. But now I think the aspirations have become so large, right? And the opportunity is so large in the country with the government enabling it through PLI and so many of GCCs getting centered in the country, that people are really looking at and saying, yes, we can grow 2x. What can we do? And how can technology help us get there? And I think for us, the most important thing is then one is the inside out and the outside in. How do we bring these inputs into Airtel from our customers, real problems to solve, correct? Convert that, productize them, build out solutions for our customers, and then push it back to the larger segment of the market saying, look, you told us this was a problem to solve, and we think we can do it better than anybody else in the market, right? And it's more about co-building solutions with our customers and then ensuring that we take it to a larger set of customers. And how do we really do it at a massive scale, right? It was 4G earlier, fiber, now 5G, and the Prime Minister's vision is 6G a couple of years later. So that spending is not stopping.
We are proud that we are sitting with two brands that India is actually proud of. Yeah, so thank you.
Thank you, Shradha.
Thanks.
Thanks.